The air in the small apartment always smelled faintly of dust and Sarah's worn fabric softener, a comforting scent to Elias Thorne. At 7 years old, Elias navigated his world not with his eyes, which had been blind since birth, but with an extraordinary symphony of senses. He was a small, vibrant boy with an infectious giggle and a mind that painted the world in vivid soundscapes and intricate textures. Elias lived with his single mother, Sarah, in a cozy but cramped two-bedroom apartment, a haven against the relentless hum of the city and the constant underlying hum of their financial struggles. Every day was a delicate balance of managing household expenses and ensuring Elias received his crucial therapy sessions, each one a necessary but costly step in helping him navigate a world he couldn't see. Yet despite the burdens, joy found a way to bloom in their little home, often cultivated by Elias's profound love for music. Music was Elias's window to the world. He'd spend hours by the old, crackling radio on his mother's nightstand, a vintage relic that often skipped and sputtered. But to Elias, it was a portal. He'd absorb every note, every subtle nuance, from the soaring melodies of classical concertos to the intricate rhythms of jazz. Then, with an almost uncanny precision, he'd recreate his own versions of these sonic landscapes. He didn't have a piano or any instrument, really. Instead, he used what he had, the varying resonance of a ceramic mug, the hollow thrum of the wooden table, the dull thud of the wall. His small fingers would tap, drum, and glide across these everyday surfaces, transforming them into a makeshift orchestra, weaving complex, unique rhythms and melodies that were entirely his own. Sarah would often pause, captivated, listening to the intricate music her son crafted from the mundane, a mix of awe and a faint ache of worry for a talent she couldn't fully nurture. One brisk autumn afternoon, as Sarah and Elias enjoyed a rare moment of peace in the neighborhood park, their quiet stroll was shattered by a chorus of panicked barks and frantic shouts. A small, yelping sound, distinct even amidst the chaos, caught Elias's attention. "Mommy, a doggy! It sounds stuck," he cried, pointing towards a rusted storm drain near a cluster of old oak trees. Several adults had gathered, wringing their hands, peering uselessly into the dark grate. "It's a puppy, stuck down there," one woman exclaimed, her voice laced with distress. "We can hear it, but we can't see it." While others debated calling animal control or trying to pry open the heavy grate, Elias remained perfectly still, his head cocked, his sensitive ears straining. He heard the faint whimpers, the scratch of tiny paws against metal, the soft gurgle of water below. His unique way of seeing the world through sound kicked in. "It's not under the grate, Mommy," Elias suddenly declared, his voice clear and confident. "It's on the left side, by the big rock. I hear it scratching the wall there, not the bottom. And I hear a drip, drip, like it's close to the water pipe." Sarah, used to Elias's extraordinary hearing, quickly relayed his precise directions to a group of men who were attempting to lift the heavy grate. Following Elias's auditory cues, one of them, a burly construction worker, managed to reach a hand into a small opening beside the grate, just as Elias had described. With a final, triumphant tug, he pulled out a trembling, soaking wet puppy, no bigger than his hand. The crowd erupted in cheers, showering Elias with praise. The little puppy, shivering but safe, instinctively limped towards Elias, nudging its wet nose into his hand. Elias knelt, his face breaking into a wide, joyous smile, his fingers gently petting the grateful creature. This act, simple yet profound, was Elias's save the cat moment. It wasn't just about his extraordinary ability. It was about his immediate, unhesitating compassion, his innate desire to help, even when others were paralyzed by helplessness. It painted a clear picture of a boy whose inner world was far richer and more perceptive than anyone could imagine, a heart as bright as the sounds he absorbed. But beneath this outward display of joyful innocence lay a deeper secret, a talent that went beyond mere mimicry. One quiet evening, as Sarah cooked dinner, the old radio unexpectedly crackled to life, broadcasting a live recording of a notoriously difficult classical piano concerto. It was a whirlwind of complex arpeggios, rapid trills, and thunderous chords, a piece that challenged even seasoned virtuosos. Sarah, momentarily distracted by a sputtering pan, barely registered the music. But Elias, perched on a small stool by the kitchen table, was utterly absorbed. His small hands, seemingly independent of conscious thought, began to move. He tapped rhythmically on the worn plastic keys of his old toy piano, a simple, brightly colored toy with only a few functioning keys. And then, impossibly, he began to recreate a segment of the intricate concerto he was hearing, note for perfect note. The toy piano, limited as it was, miraculously yielded the correct melody, a haunting echo of the grandeur unfolding on the radio. Sarah, turning to stir her pot, froze. Her spoon clattered to the floor. She stared, dumbfounded, as her 7-year-old blind son, who had never had a single piano lesson, flawlessly reproduced a complex classical piece on a child's toy. This startling display was the seed of mystery, a silent revelation of Elias's unbelievable gift. Sarah, while bursting with pride, also felt a surge of fear. Such a talent, she knew, would demand proper nurturing, formal training, and an instrument far more sophisticated than a toy. It would be expensive, a financial burden they simply couldn't afford. It was a glimpse into a breathtaking possibility, tinged with the familiar ache of impossibility, quietly waiting for the right moment to either blossom or fade. The muted hum of the ancient refrigerator in their tiny kitchen was usually a comforting backdrop to Sarah's thoughts. But lately, it sounded like a slow, deliberate countdown. Elias, despite his vibrant spirit, had been struggling. His boundless energy seemed to wane more quickly, and he tired easily after even short walks. Sarah, ever attuned to her son's subtle cues, felt a persistent knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. Then came the phone call that jolted their fragile world. Dr. Aris, a soft-spoken but direct ophthalmologist at the city's leading research hospital, had new information about Elias's condition. "Sarah," Dr. Aris's voice was gentle, yet held an undercurrent of profound significance. "We've had a breakthrough. A new experimental surgical procedure, still in its very early stages, has shown promising results in cases similar to Elias's. It wouldn't grant him full sight, no. But there is a chance, a very small chance, it could give him partial vision. Enough to perceive light, basic shapes, maybe even discern colors." Hope, a feeling Sarah hadn't dared to fully embrace in years, flared within her, bright and exhilarating. But it was immediately followed by Dr. Aris's next words, which extinguished that hope with a chilling precision. "However, Sarah, this procedure is incredibly specialized. It's not yet approved for widespread use, and as such, it's not covered by insurance. The cost is extraordinary. We're talking in the high 6 figures. The number hit Sarah like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. High 6 figures. It was an astronomical sum, a universe away from her meager waitress wages. Despair, cold and insidious, began to creep in. For days, she moved in a blur of frantic activity and quiet desperation. She worked every single shift the restaurant offered, her feet aching, her hands raw, her body screaming in protest. She picked up odd jobs, cleaning apartments, delivering groceries, anything to earn an extra dollar. She called every family member, every distant relative, every friend, humbly asking for help, but their own struggles left them with little to offer beyond heartfelt apologies and prayers. She began to sell off the few precious items she owned. Her grandmother's delicate silver locket, a small collection of antique porcelain figurines she'd inherited, even her beloved, though slightly out of tune, acoustic guitar. Each item sold felt like a piece of her soul chipped away, a sacrifice made with a heavy heart but an unshakable resolve. Yet, even with all her efforts, the money amounted to a heartbreakingly small fraction of what was needed. The sheer scale of the financial mountain before her felt insurmountable. The weight of her inadequacy, the unbearable thought that she might fail to give Elias this miraculous chance, gnawed at her, filling her with a profound sense of guilt. After weeks of relentless, exhausting effort, Sarah faced the brutal truth. She had exhausted every conventional avenue. Her savings were depleted, her network stretched thin, and her body pushed to its physical limits. The cost of the surgery remained a gaping, unbridgeable chasm. Dr. Aris had been clear. There was a limited window before Elias's condition might progress to a point where even the experimental surgery wouldn't be viable. The clock was ticking, and Sarah felt a terrifying helplessness she'd never known. She sat by Elias's bedside one evening, gently stroking his hair, the soft glow of his nightlight casting a tender halo around his sleeping form. Her heart ached with a familiar, searing pain. To know there was a chance, a flickering possibility, for her son to see the world, even partially, and to be utterly powerless to seize it. It was a torment beyond words. This was her point of no return. The prospect of Elias remaining forever in darkness, when a glimmer of light was within reach, fueled a fierce, desperate determination. She couldn't give up. She wouldn't. She would find a way, no matter how unconventional, how unlikely. She began to scour online forums, research local community events, and even consider local talent shows. She had to find a truly extraordinary solution, a miracle that lay beyond her current means. She would do anything, absolutely anything, to raise the money, even if it meant stepping into unknown territories, pushing Elias's unique gift into the spotlight, despite her ingrained reluctance to expose him to the harsh glare of public scrutiny. The stakes were too high, the love too profound to yield to despair. The stark, almost intimidating grandeur of the city's leading research hospital was a constant, chilling counterpoint to Sarah's desperate hope. Every sterile corridor, every hushed medical consultation, seemed to echo with the impossible sum required for Elias's experimental surgery. Her primary contact there was Dr. Silas Thorne, Elias's new pediatric ophthalmologist. Dr. Thorne was undeniably brilliant, a visionary in his field, but his demeanor was as clinical as the instruments he wielded. He spoke in precise academic terms, and when it came to the financial aspects of the groundbreaking procedure, he emphasized the astronomical costs with an unsettling detachment. "Mrs. Thorne," he'd stated, his voice flat and devoid of warmth during a particularly disheartening consultation, "while the potential is there, the procedure for Elias's condition is incredibly resource-intensive. Our hospital, unfortunately, operates under strict protocols regarding upfront payments for experimental surgeries of this magnitude. We simply cannot proceed until the financial arrangements are fully secured." He wasn't malicious, but he embodied the rigid, profit-driven underbelly of the healthcare system, an unyielding force that stood between Elias and his chance at sight. He was a Type B antagonist, not an evil force, but a formidable obstacle, an embodiment of the impersonal system. Adding to the relentless pressure was Nurse Bethany, a stern-faced woman who seemed to take a grim satisfaction in reminding Sarah of the mounting bills and rapidly approaching deadlines. "Just another reminder, Mrs. Thorne," she'd often say, her tone devoid of warmth, her pen poised over a clipboard. "The payment for next week's diagnostic imaging is still outstanding, and the surgery deposit, of course, is due in 10 days. We can't hold his spot indefinitely." She was an extension of the cold, unyielding system, her words like tiny, persistent needles pricking at Sarah's frayed nerves, amplifying her anxiety with every interaction. In stark contrast to the hospital's bleak atmosphere, Sarah found small pockets of unexpected warmth and human connection in her daily life. At the local community center, where Elias attended a program for visually impaired children, his music teacher, Ms. Elena, was a beacon of support. Ms. Elena was a young, kind-hearted woman with a perpetual smile and a deep love for music. She was the first person, other than Sarah, who truly recognized and nurtured Elias's extraordinary musical talent. After the regular program ended, Ms. Elena would often stay late, spending extra time with Elias. Despite not having a proper piano, she would use a small electronic keyboard, patiently teaching him basic music theory, scales and chords, translating complex musical concepts into tactile and auditory experiences for him. "Elias has a gift, Sarah," she'd told Sarah once, her eyes shining with admiration. "An extraordinary ear. He doesn't just hear notes, he feels them, sees them in his mind." Ms. Elena's unwavering belief in Elias, her gentle guidance, and her selfless dedication made her a vital helper, a source of encouragement, and a reminder that not everyone was consumed by indifference. The night of the annual Young Virtuoso piano competition was etched into Sarah's memory, a swirling chaos of nervous energy and unexpected fate. Sarah, against all odds, and with Ms. Elena's encouragement, had somehow secured a spot for Elias in the prestigious competition. Her reasoning had been simple, desperate. The grand prize offered a substantial sum, enough to cover a significant portion of Elias's surgery. The city's grandest venue, the Symphony Hall, buzzed with anticipation, its opulent interior filled with anxious parents and eager young musicians. Among the formidable panel of judges was Maestro Alastair Finch, a name whispered with reverence and a touch of fear in classical music circles. A world-renowned concert pianist, now retired, Maestro Finch was notorious for his exacting standards, his conservative views, and his unwavering belief that true musical genius was born from relentless discipline and innate, undeniable talent. He was famously dismissive of amateur efforts, often stating that music was not a mere pastime for amusement, but a sacred, arduous calling. He was a Type B antagonist, not malicious, but a formidable gatekeeper, his skepticism and elitism representing the daunting challenge Elias faced. He often articulated his belief that children should play just for fun, subtly implying that true artistry was beyond most. Elias, dressed in his best, slightly oversized suit, sat patiently in the green room backstage, a cacophony of nervous fidgeting and last-minute practice scales surrounding him. He hadn't touched a real piano before, only his toy keyboard and the surfaces in their small apartment. Sarah, her heart pounding, felt a surge of doubt. Was she pushing him too hard? Was this fair to him? Suddenly, a loud shriek echoed from a nearby practice room. One of the competitors, a notoriously spoiled and arrogant young prodigy named Cassandra, had tripped, knocking over a music stand and scattering her sheet music. "My piece! It's ruined!" she wailed, clutching a torn page of a complex Chopin nocturne. The melody she had been practicing, a cascade of intricate arpeggios and delicate trills, had abruptly cut off. Elias, who had been listening intently to the muffled sounds from the other room, cocked his head. His small fingers, seemingly of their own volition, began to tap rhythmically on the armrest of his chair, replicating the exact tempo and rhythm of the now broken melody. Then quietly, he slid off the chair and, guided by instinct, made his way to a grand piano tucked away in the corner of the green room, used by competitors for warm-ups. He reached out, his small hands tentatively exploring the cool ivory and ebony keys, his blind eyes staring straight ahead. He pressed a few random notes, a dissonant cluster. Sarah tensed, fearing he was about to make a fool of himself. But then, something extraordinary happened. Elias paused, his head tilting slightly, as if listening to an internal symphony. His small fingers, guided by an unseen force, found the correct keys. He began to play. It wasn't random anymore. It was the Chopin nocturne Cassandra had been practicing, the very section she had just ruined. Every note was precise, every nuance perfectly articulated. Then, impossibly, he continued, playing the entire piece from memory, flawlessly, without a single hesitation or mistake, bringing the complex melody to a breathtaking, complete conclusion. The rich, resonant sound of the grand piano filled the room, utterly transforming the chaotic backstage area into a hallowed space of pure music. This was Elias's unveiling, an astounding, unbidden display of his unbelievable auditory memory and innate musical genius. He wasn't just playing, he was recreating, note for perfect note, a complex classical piece he had only heard for a few moments and had never been formally taught. Maestro Alastair Finch, who had just stepped into the green room to deliver a curt reprimand about the noise, froze. His stern expression, usually etched with a permanent scowl of disapproval, slowly morphed into one of profound shock. He watched, utterly captivated, as Elias, a blind child, seemingly untouched by formal training, brought the challenging nocturne to a flawless close. The sheer impossibility of it, the raw, undeniable talent emanating from the small figure at the grand piano, defied every one of his deeply held beliefs about musical prodigies. He had seen countless child performers, but never anything like this. This moment, witnessed in the chaotic wings of a competition hall, was the seed of profound doubt in his rigid convictions. He saw the pure, unadulterated essence of music, untainted by ego or ambition, flowing effortlessly from Elias. His initial annoyance vanished, replaced by a dawning, almost fearful recognition of true genius. He said nothing, simply stood rooted to the spot, his discerning eyes fixed on the small boy who had just shattered all his preconceived notions. The Grand Symphony Hall, usually a bastion of refined quiet, now felt like a coliseum to Sarah, its opulent interior amplifying every anxious whisper, every rustle of programs. The air, thick with the scent of polished wood and nervous anticipation, pressed down on her. This majestic hall, a stage for dreams, had become her arena, a battleground where Elias would face not just the judges, but the crushing weight of their impossible circumstances. Maestro Alastair Finch, despite his stunned reaction in the green room, maintained his formidable, skeptical demeanor. After witnessing Elias's impromptu performance, he had approached Sarah, his gaze piercing. "Mrs. Thorne," he'd stated, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. "That was an anomaly. Remarkable, certainly. But a competition of this caliber demands more than a parlor trick. It demands sustained technique, discipline, and a thorough understanding of musical theory. Your son, while gifted, has clearly had no formal training." He paused, his gaze sweeping over Elias's small, still figure. "I will allow him to compete. But let us be clear. He is here to play just for fun. Do not harbor any illusions of victory. This competition is not a spectacle. It is a serious platform for serious musicians." His words, though delivered without malice, were a brutal dismissal, a subtle but undeniable insinuation that Elias, with his lack of sight and formal training, was merely a curiosity, an outlier who didn't belong. His dismissive tone, combined with the impossible financial deadline for Noah's surgery, formed a relentless pressure. The other parents, a gaggle of competitive and often petty individuals, quickly caught wind of Elias's inclusion. Whispers followed Sarah and Elias wherever they went. "A blind boy, no lessons? It's a charity case, surely. They're just letting him play to gain sympathy. It's unfair to the real talents." These snide remarks, though petty, added another layer of anxiety, creating an isolating bubble around Sarah and Elias. Sarah and Elias were utterly, terrifyingly alone in this challenge. They had no money for professional piano lessons, no resources to even rent a proper piano for Elias to practice on. Elias relied solely on his phenomenal auditory memory, replaying the music he'd heard on the radio in his mind, his fingers tapping out the melodies on any available surface. The kitchen table, the back of a chair, even his own leg. He was attempting to conquer a grand piano, an instrument he had only touched a few times, armed with nothing but instinct and an unshakable inner music. Sarah spent sleepless nights agonizing over their predicament. Every conversation with Dr. Thorne echoed in her mind, the grim prognosis for Elias's sight without the surgery. She pushed herself past exhaustion, taking on extra shifts, scrubbing floors, anything to earn an extra $1. But the monumental sum needed for the experimental surgery remained hopelessly out of reach. The deadline for Elias's surgery loomed, a monstrous shadow growing larger with each passing hour. The ultimate test arrived on the day of the competition. Elias was scheduled to perform last, a slot usually reserved for the most anticipated contenders. As the long hours crawled by, a parade of impeccably trained young pianists took to the stage. Each one delivered technically brilliant, flawlessly executed performances, impressing the judges and drawing polite yet enthusiastic applause from the discerning audience. The tension in the hall grew palpable, each successive performance raising the bar higher. Then came the penultimate performer, 12-year-old Sophia Chang, a renowned child prodigy. She walked onto the stage with an air of practiced confidence and launched into a notoriously difficult piece by Rachmaninoff, a cascading torrent of notes that demanded immense skill and virtuosity. Sophia's performance was breathtaking, a display of pure technical mastery that left the audience awestruck. When she finished, the applause was thunderous, a standing ovation that seemed to shake the very foundations of the hall. Maestro Finch, his face a complex mixture of admiration and professional detachment, leaned into the microphone. An absolutely astounding performance, he announced, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed hall. A true display of what years of dedication and innate talent can achieve. I dare say only a genuine prodigy, a true genius, could possibly surpass such a masterful rendition. His words, intended to acknowledge Sophia's brilliance, unwittingly amplified the crushing pressure on Elias. Elias, sitting backstage, his small hands resting calmly in his lap, heard every word. He felt the tremor of the applause, the ripple of awe from the audience. He heard Maestro Finch's pronouncement, every syllable a stark reminder of the impossibility of his own task. A 7-year-old blind boy with no formal training was expected to follow a performance of such perfection. He felt the weight of expectation, the unspoken skepticism, and the immense, almost suffocating burden of his own desperate hope for sight. His future, his chance to see the world, hung by the slenderest of threads, balanced precariously on his small, unproven talent. This was his hang by a single hair moment. He took a deep, silent breath and prepared to walk onto the stage, into the blinding glare of the spotlights he could not see, to face a challenge that seemed utterly insurmountable. The stage lights, though unseen by Elias, felt like a palpable heat as he slowly walked towards the grand piano. The silence in the symphony hall was absolute, thick with anticipation and the residual awe from Sophia Chang's flawless performance. Sarah watched from the wings, her heart hammering against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the stillness of the cavernous hall. This was it, the precipice. The breathless moment before her son either soared or crumbled under the weight of impossible expectations. She squeezed Ms. Elena's hand, both women silently willing strength into the small boy on stage. Elias reached the piano, his small fingers brushing against the cool, polished wood of the keys. He paused, his head cocked slightly, as if listening to a silent symphony only he could hear. The audience held its breath. Then Elias took a deep, deliberate breath and began to play. It was not the Rachmaninoff. It was not a classical piece from the competition's approved repertoire. Instead, Elias began to weave a tapestry of sounds utterly his own. His fingers, small yet powerful, danced across the keys with an astonishing fluidity, creating a melody that was both intricate and deeply evocative. He played the soft, rhythmic patter of rain on their apartment window, the joyful, erratic chirping of birds in the park, the comforting murmur of his mother's voice as she read him bedtime stories. He translated the playful splash of water in Noah's bathtub, the resonant thrum of a guitar string from a distant street musician, even the chaotic, vibrant symphony of city traffic, into a breathtaking composition. It was a piece that swelled with hope, ebbed with moments of quiet introspection, and surged with an undeniable, pure joy. It was the world as Elias saw it, a vibrant, complex tapestry woven from sound, touch, and a boundless imagination. The music was a living, breathing entity, filling every corner of the vast hall, wrapping around each listener, pulling them into Elias's unique perception of reality. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Maestro Alistair Finch, who had settled back into his seat with an air of resigned expectation, slowly leaned forward, his eyes fixed on Elias. His usually stern face softened, then crumpled, as tears began to stream unbidden down his cheeks. He, the formidable maestro who believed in rigid technique and formal training, was witnessing something beyond explanation, beyond technique. Pure, unadulterated genius born from the soul. He, who had told Elias to play just for fun, now understood the profound depth of what fun truly meant for this child. Sarah, watching from the wings, wept openly, tears of overwhelming pride and profound relief. Ms. Elena stood beside her, openly sobbing, her face a mask of awe and adoration. The entire audience, captivated and deeply moved, rose to their feet as one, their collective silence shattering into a thunderous, emotional standing ovation long before Elias had even finished his piece. Many openly wept, their faces streaked with tears, completely overwhelmed by the raw beauty and undeniable power of his music. When the final lingering note faded into the hushed air, a prolonged, stunned silence hung over the hall, broken only by the sniffles of the audience. Then, the applause erupted, a deafening wave of sound that crashed over the stage, a genuine, visceral expression of awe and admiration. Maestro Finch, his face still streaked with tears, slowly rose from his seat. He walked onto the stage, his usual stately gait replaced by a more humble, purposeful stride. He approached Elias, who sat at the piano, his small chest heaving gently. Maestro Finch knelt down, taking Elias's small hands gently in his own. "Elias," the maestro began, his voice thick with emotion, trembling slightly. "My boy, you didn't just play music. You painted a universe. You are a genius." He turned to the microphone, his voice resonating with newfound conviction. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice booming with a clarity that silenced the remaining applause. "We have just witnessed a miracle. Elias Thorne is not only the undisputed winner of this competition, but I am personally offering him a full scholarship to the Royal Academy of Music, with all expenses covered, for as long as he wishes to learn and create." A fresh wave of applause erupted, but Maestro Finch held up a hand. "And that is not all. The Maestro Finch Foundation," he continued, his gaze returning to Elias, his voice filled with a profound humility, "will cover the entire cost of Elias's experimental surgery, every single penny. Because Elias," he said, looking directly at the small boy, his voice now a tender whisper, "your light is not just in your music. It deserves to see the world." The hall erupted into a cacophony of cheers, gasps, and joyous tears. Sarah rushed onto the stage, embracing Elias in a tearful hug, her whispered thank yous lost in the overwhelming sound. The competitive parents, once so smug and dismissive, now stood with slack jaws, their faces a mixture of regret and bewildered awe. Some quietly slipped out, unable to face the sheer, undeniable triumph unfolding before them. Others, humbled, approached Sarah to offer genuine, albeit belated, congratulations. Elias, nestled in his mother's arms, a small smile gracing his lips, could feel the warmth of the maestro's hand, the resounding cheers of the crowd. He might not have seen the light, but he certainly felt it. This was his vindication, a moment of undeniable triumph, where his pure, unadulterated talent had silenced all doubt and unlocked a future brighter than he could have ever imagined. The thunderous applause faded, replaced by the hushed reverence of a dream taking root. Elias, still on stage, felt the warmth of his mother's embrace, the firm, reassuring grip of Maestro Finch's hand. The symphony hall, once an arena of daunting pressure, now resonated with the echoes of his triumph. Noah's future, once shrouded in uncertainty, now gleamed with the promise of sight. The experimental surgery was scheduled immediately, and Dr. Thorne, whose demeanor had notably softened, spoke with genuine optimism, his earlier clinical detachment replaced by a visible enthusiasm for Elias's remarkable journey. The news of Elias's astonishing performance and Maestro Finch's unprecedented sponsorship spread like wildfire, not just through the classical music world, but far beyond. News channels picked up the story, captivated by the blind boy with the unbelievable gift. Maestro Finch, once an intimidating figure of rigid musical orthodoxy, now became Elias's most fervent champion. He gave interviews, his voice filled with a passion rarely heard before, openly acknowledging his initial skepticism and celebrating Elias's raw, untaught genius. "He taught me," the maestro declared in one televised interview, his eyes shining, "that the soul of music transcends all perceived limitations. It's not about what you see, but what you feel, what you hear in your heart." His public endorsements shifted not only public perception, but also influenced his peers. Other classical musicians and patrons, inspired by Elias's story and Maestro Finch's newfound passion, began to look beyond conventional talent, recognizing the vast, untapped potential in unexpected places. The competitive parents who had once spread whispers of favoritism now offered humbled apologies, their envy replaced by a dawning respect. A few months later, the atmosphere in Elias's hospital room was one of quiet anticipation. The bandages were finally coming off. Dr. Thorne, a faint smile on his face, gently removed the final gauze. "Elias," he said softly, "open your eyes." Elias blinked, slowly. The world didn't explode into perfect clarity, as in a movie. Instead, a soft, diffuse light filtered in. Blurs of color, indistinct shapes. He saw the gentle, blurry outline of his mother's face, the subtle gleam of Dr. Thorne's glasses. It wasn't full vision, but it was enough. Enough to distinguish light from shadow, to perceive the vibrant hues of the flowers on his bedside table, to see the comforting, blurry form of his mother leaning over him. It was a miracle of partial sight, a new way of experiencing the world that would intertwine with his already rich auditory landscape. Maestro Finch became Elias's dedicated mentor, his presence a constant source of inspiration and guidance. He spent hours with Elias in his grand home studio, not just teaching him technique, but exploring the nuances of musical expression, encouraging Elias to continue composing pieces that reflected his unique perception of the world. "Your music, Elias," the maestro would often say, his eyes twinkling, "is like looking at a painting, not with your eyes, but with your ears. Now, with this new gift, imagine the colors you can add." Ms. Elena, Elias's first music teacher, remained a vital part of his journey, visiting regularly, her warm encouragement a steady anchor for both Elias and Sarah. One serene afternoon, Elias sat at the maestro's magnificent grand piano, his fingers gliding over the keys. His eyes, now capable of discerning the light and shadow of the instrument, added a new dimension to his playing. Maestro Finch sat nearby, a cup of tea growing cold in his hand, utterly engrossed in Elias's melodic tapestry. "Elias," the maestro said, his voice soft, contemplative, "you didn't just find your voice on that stage. You helped me find my own. You taught me that true artistry lies not in technical perfection alone, but in the boundless, pure spirit of creation. You taught me that sometimes, to truly see, we must learn to listen with our hearts." Elias smiled, a radiant, knowing smile. "I think I was always seeing with music, maestro," he replied, his voice calm and thoughtful. "And now, I can see the world in my own way. It's like having two sets of eyes, one for sound and one for light." Sarah, sitting quietly in a nearby armchair, watched her son. The torment of years, the gnawing anxiety, had dissipated, replaced by a profound, almost overwhelming sense of peace. This was her new calm, a serenity born not just from the resolution of a crisis, but from the blossoming of a life beyond anything she had ever dared to dream. A future filled with harmony and light. 10 years later, the name Elias Thorne resonated through the world's most prestigious concert halls, a testament to a talent that had defied all odds. No longer the small blind boy tapping rhythms on kitchen tables, Elias was a celebrated concert pianist, hailed as one of the most innovative and soulful musicians of his generation. His performances were sellouts, his compositions lauded by critics for their unique blend of classical complexity and raw emotional depth. He traveled the globe, his music a universal language that touched hearts, always carrying within him the unique light he now perceived, a blurry, beautiful world of shapes and colors that infused his sound with an unparalleled richness. The Maestro Finch Foundation, under the joint guidance of Elias and his venerable mentor, had flourished into a global beacon of hope. What began as a single act of kindness had transformed into a comprehensive music academy dedicated to nurturing young talents from underprivileged backgrounds, particularly those with visual impairments. Elias, despite his demanding performance schedule, dedicated significant time to the academy. He taught masterclasses, inspiring students not just with his virtuosity, but with his unwavering belief that music was a boundless landscape, accessible to all who dared to dream. He shared his story, a powerful narrative of resilience and the transformative power of sound, encouraging his students to see music, not just with their ears, but with their hearts. Sarah, Elias's mother, now served as the Academy's compassionate and incredibly efficient executive director. She managed its daily operations, ensuring that no aspiring musician, regardless of their circumstances, was ever turned away. Her quiet strength and unwavering dedication were the backbone of the institution, a living testament to the journey she and Elias had shared. Ms. Elena, Elias's first true music teacher, was a beloved figure at the Academy, continuing to inspire young minds with her gentle guidance and infectious passion for music. One crisp autumn evening, a buzz of anticipation filled the air at the grand opening of the Elias Thorne Institute for Inclusive Arts. Located in the heart of what was once a struggling urban neighborhood, the institute was a sprawling, state-of-the-art facility, meticulously designed by a team of architects, many of whom had been inspired by Elias's story. It featured soundproofed practice rooms, a sensory music studio for students with diverse needs, and a main concert hall engineered for perfect acoustics. The building itself was a symphony of accessible design, a testament to the belief that art should be for everyone. Elias stood on the stage of the new concert hall, the soft glow of the spotlights illuminating his face. Beside him stood Maestro Finch, now frail but with eyes that shone with immense pride. Tonight, Maestro Finch's voice, though softer, resonated with profound emotion. We celebrate not just a building, but a philosophy that Elias, my extraordinary student, embodies. He has shown us that the truest vision comes not from the eyes, but from the soul. Then Elias turned to the magnificent grand piano. He began to play a new composition, a piece he simply called Second Spring. It was a breathtaking symphony of sound and emotion, complex, vibrant, and filled with a joy that was almost palpable. The music swelled, painting vivid pictures in the minds of the audience. The gentle touch of rain, the warmth of a mother's embrace, the thrilling rush of wind, the vibrant hues of a world gradually revealing itself. It was a story of darkness transformed into light, of a seemingly insurmountable challenge conquered by an indomitable spirit. As the final lingering notes faded, the hall erupted in a standing ovation. Elias, tears silently tracing paths down his cheeks, bowed deeply. In the front row, Sarah watched, her face etched with a love and pride so deep it transcended words. Beside her sat Lily, now a confident young woman, her eyes, though still sightless, fixed on Elias's form on stage. She smiled, a profound understanding passing between them, a silent acknowledgement of the interconnectedness of their lives. Touched by the same generosity, Elias straightened, and for a fleeting moment, as the stage lights caught his eyes, one could almost imagine he was seeing the sea of faces before him, not with clarity, but with the profound vision of an artist who had painted a universe of sound. He had found his voice, created his world, and in doing so, gifted countless others the chance to find their own. This was his second spring, a vibrant, blossoming future, a testament to the enduring power of kindness, the unbelievable gift of talent, and the endless possibilities that bloom when a single act of compassion sets a soul free. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss upcoming narratives that delve into the profound human spirit and the power of unseen heroes. Thank you for joining the journey.